Hello, all you fabulous people, and welcome to another rendition of the Disinformed podcast. I'm Michael.
I'm also Michael.
I'm Jessie.
And this is a part 2 of our talk on fanfics and fandoms. So I'm just going to throw you right into the action. Enjoy.
Were you the kind of person that would shit on Hufflepuffs?
No, honestly, and I'll admit, because this is something that I regret a little bit now because I don't really like this professor, but there was a professor that had wrote fan fiction of Harry Potter called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. It was one of those people that does the, pushing the glasses up and saying, well, actually.
Oh, no.
Yes. When I was in undergrad, I was part of the honors college at ASU, the university I went to for my undergrad, and I was surrounded by elitists, and I tried to be one. But the one thing that I still appreciate, because the whole idea was that instead of Aunt Petunia marrying Uncle Vernon, who was some car salesman or something like that, she married a a biochemist or something like that, a really smart guy from Oxford. And so they taught Harry to be super smart. And so he was super smart and he solved all these problems. And yeah, it's the first book, which was the only book that they wrote, so it was supposed to be his first year, is as long as the first 4. It's really, really convoluted, and it involves a lot of unnecessary things. I'm just gonna say it. I don't like the book nowadays. But one thing that I did appreciate was the lack of veneration for Gryffindors, because they pretty much the author talked about how they were foolhardy, that they were just overly brave, and that was their whole thing. They did a lot of stupid stuff because that was their whole shtick. And that let me appreciate the other houses more. So I never shat on Hufflepuff because I understood that their whole thing was camaraderie and, being not loyal, because loyal and it assumes that you just are a bootlicker. But the idea of Hufflepuffs being they are all about the community. They are all about not just themselves. They want to contribute as a whole. And that's what I really respected. That was his breakdown of the houses in a more rational manner than just the Hufflepuffs are just the lackeys that will follow you. The Ravenclaws are the nerds. The Slytherins are always going to be Dark Lords, and the Gryffindors are always going to be the good guys. Looking at it from a more rational standpoint made the houses make a lot more sense and made them seem more realistic than, well, everyone wants in Gryffindor because they always want to be the good guys. Unless they don't, then they're Slytherin. And the poor saps that don't get into either or get into Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff. If Ravenclaw if they're smart, Hufflepuff if they're stupid. I disagreed.
I'm going to chime in here and say, since we all kind of shat on present day Harry Potter, I think we might be spending a little too much time giving her and her ilk some focus.
I bring it up because I when I was part of the fandom, I am a Hufflepuff, but I would get a lot of shit for it. And
really?
People are like, oh god, you're a Hufflepuff, that's so stupid, you're so dumb. And Hufflepuffs were cool, man. Their dorms
that's
were
so
in the
interesting.
kitchens.
I guess that's part of that toxicity you were talking about then, because which is so funny because to me one of the things about fandom has always been I like that fandom can be so embracing and for instance, I talked about the way I got into Harry Potter, right? Somebody was super into it, and therefore I kind of hopped in with them. Same thing with Invader Zim. I remember in 2005, I was in a college class. It was my very first one, and woman, her name was Elizabeth. She was sitting right next to me, and we were both sitting at the back of the class, and we would kind of just casually chat in between, like, you know, lessons and stuff here and there. And she mentioned Invader Zim, and I had never heard of it at the time. And like then the next class, she brought me like volume 1 of the DVD set she had and like lent me that. I remember going home and watching that and being like, oh, this is fantastic. Devoured all that, brought it back to her. She brought me the second volume, and it was like, you know, here we are now. And that was almost 20 years ago. That was like 18 years ago. And now Invader Zim's like the background of my phone. Right. And it was something that I had never heard of except for the person sitting next to me in class mentioning it and then lending me a DVD, multiple DVDs over time. But it's like that sort of aspect to fandom is something that I really appreciate and enjoy. And it's always disappointing when like the toxicity of it can kind of come into play. As you were kind of mentioning before, Michael, with like Star Trek as an example, right? Star Trek is such an interesting example of the toxicity of it because, you know, we talk about, you know, infinite diversity and infinite combinations, IDIC, right? It's one of the key like principles of Star Trek and like, you know, related to the Vulcans.
Before we get into that, I kind of want to hear like Jesse's like, yeah. Just because like I don't want to hop back into Harry Potter.
Yeah. Oh no, I was done with Harry Potter. We can move on to Trekkies. That was just one of the things. Like there's other, like I've experienced other toxic things within like the Critical Role fandom, and we can talk about that later. But yeah, I'm done talking about Harry Potter.
It's
dead to me.
Yeah.
Whoa! Dead to me.
Yeah, I wasn't even like
you smack like one of the pictures off of your wall, it just shatters. You're like, get this shit out of here. What am I even doing? There's no Hufflepuff.
Then she has to get up to get the broom. She's like, "Oh, there's glass everywhere." 1 second, guys.
I am house. I have house elf. Free the serfs. That's what I am now.
I wasn't even moving into Star Trek per se. Just still talking about the toxicity of it. Just because Star Trek to me is like, you know, talks about this enlightened future, right, where we don't have poverty and money isn't a thing, and we embrace infinite diversity, and yet within that, there's this like toxic element, you know, for instance, there's a large swath of the fandom that was actively against Star Trek Discovery just because the lead actress is, you know, a black female. Now, I think Discovery has a lot of issues, none of which none of which are related to her gender or her ethnicity, or even her acting. I think she's a good actress. I just think some of the writing on Discovery is atrocious. But that's just nitpicks that I would have with any show, right? But it is always so interesting to see like aspects of the fandom that just like attack, you know, the actress, you know, and it's just so weird to me because if it happens in Star Trek, obviously it can happen everywhere, but I'm just like, man, like, you know, how can you be a fan of this show that embraces these ideals when you are like actively against that sort of thing? And so it's very strange and always disappointing because I like the embracing aspects of fandom that bring people together, right? And unify people and bring people of all sorts of different backgrounds and everything, that because you can embrace this and coalesce around this one thing. Like, oh, you know, you have a completely different background than me, different culture, different foods, different music, different language, perhaps, but we both love this thing and we can sit down and talk about it for hours and become friends over it and bond.
Mm-hmm. And like, it's even more interesting that people would be upset over that. Considering the history Star Trek has, they had the first interracial kiss during the original series between Kirk and I can never pronounce her character's Uhura. I never pronounce her name right, never, and I never will. But between them, fair. You know what? Fair. But like, yeah, so like the show itself was groundbreaking in terms of the diversity that they had. And so it's always interesting to see like fans of the show, because that's something that happens especially a lot more now, where fans are like, oh, well, this show has gone, you know, it's too much. I hate using
quote unquote woke.
I hate using that term, but yes, in that case, people are like, oh, it's too woke. Where like they've been breaking boundaries, they've been setting standards since the original series.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating too because like it to me like taints the entire conversation because I can't sit down and be like, yeah, honestly, I don't really like Discovery that much because you're immediately it's because it's a black woman that's in the scene. It's like, no, that has nothing to, yes, I know a lot of people complain about that, but no, I have like, here's my actual complaints, but you taint it because if you have this like a minority that is so vocal about critiques. You get lumped into this, like, it's very frustrating because it's like, if you didn't have that toxic element, you could sit down and have like genuine conversations about like the actual issues that you might have with the show. But when you have such a vocal minority that has an issue with like the stupidest thing, then if you genuinely have issues with the show, it's easy for people just to dismiss you as being part of that minority. Like, oh, you just don't like the show because you don't like, a black woman in charge. And it's like, no, I don't like the show because it's written like shit.
She's actually one of the best parts of the show. It's just the plot is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I do have like some issues just in general, like, nothing to do again with her, but like whose bright idea was it to like name the main woman's character Michael? Like that's just trying to be different for different sake. I don't know a single woman that's named Michael. It's like it was kind of just a weird, like right from the start, they're like, let's do something different just to be different.
Counterpoint, wasn't one of the main villains to the Next Generation a letter, like Q?
Well, yeah, but that has nothing to do with anything. That's like an alien, we emphasize as a letter, but it could be that person's name in their language or whatever.
Well, they live in more enlightened times. What if Michael is unisex like Taylor?
Fair. Listen, I'm not. I think that's what they were going for. I'm
just being a shit, but
I genuinely think that's what they were going for. But
it was really supposed to be Michelle, and someone just pronounced it wrong, and they just went with it.
Yeah,
I bet that is probably more canon than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, what kind of name is Michael? It's Michelle. You've said it incorrectly for like the last 10 takes.
Fuck it. Shit. We'll do it live.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I guess, so like obviously Star Trek, we've talked about that lots with my own experience on that. I've heavily been involved in the fandom there. I've gone on like the Star Trek cruises.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I gotta ask about those.
So good. It's like a convention. It's like a Star Trek convention on the water, and the whole ship is done up like Star Trek. Like you go into the elevators to get to different levels in the ship, and they've done them up like turbo lifts.
So like a Disney cruise, but with Star Trek.
Kind of, yeah. But you can do all kinds of different things.
That's what I was thinking.
So like, for instance, like one of the actresses from DS9, she like does yoga on her time. So like you could do yoga classes with her. Like, they had like different slots for that. I did tap dancing lessons with Gates McFadden, who played Dr. Beverly Crusher, and I got to like tap dance like with her, and so that was cool.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
yeah, because she's a choreographer, so she does that sort of thing.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, so it's really fun because you got to do all kinds of different things. I got to like the guy that plays Armin Shimmerman, the guy that plays Quark on DS9. He is like a trained Shakespearean actor, and he's like been a professor for a long time as well. So he like did like some readings and some classes for us where he basically just like broke down like parts of Hamlet as an example, and like got to read with us and like answer questions from the audience. So I got to ask him questions about like, his interpretations of like some Shakespeare stuff. So stuff that was like nothing to do with DS9 or, with the show he was primarily on, nothing to do with Star Trek. But just like stuff that they're personally interested in. And so it's kind of cool because it's kind of like there's a lot of Star Trek stuff, of course, obviously. Yeah. So you do get that like convention on the water, but you also get all of like these different like kind of like personal touches, like, like things that they're actively interested in. Like, oh, she does yoga. She does it in the morning. So she'll just lead a class. And then you're getting to do yoga with like one of the Star Trek actresses. And that's cool. So I loved it. It was literally like the best experience of my life. Up until my daughter was born. Just throw that little caveat in.
Oh, okay. It's all about your daughter now, is it? Oh, man.
Yeah. Listen, so she is going to be a little Trekkie. It's awesome. So right now she's got a little Star Trek book. So, okay, like a quick little thing. Before she was born, there's not a lot of like Star Trek kids books. And there's only a small handful, and I had bought all of the ones that existed before she was born, right? So she had her little golden books of like different Star Trek things, like Star Trek Alphabet and everything, right? So there's a little library just down the road from us, about 5 minutes down the road. And so we try to go to it like on the Saturdays, like as a little family. And so we take her there. She's only 18 months, right? So we take her in, and as soon as she's in, we just like let her go free. And the librarians there, they love her, right? Because, you know, Cordelia's super cute. And so she comes in, she waves at them, and they're waving back and everything. And then we let her go to the bookshelves and choose a book. And then she'll bring it to us and like hand it out to us to read to her. And anyways, we went there last week, and same deal, like normal. We let her go and do her little thing. And she goes over to the shelf, and we go and we sit down at the little kid chairs and wait for her to come over. And she comes running over, and what does she have? She has a Star Trek book, but like a kid's, like from the kids section, but one that I hadn't bought her. And I was like, what is this? And I look, and it only just came out like in 2022. So it didn't exist when she was born in September 2021. Right. And I was like, what? And it was the book she chose. She went and she's looking at the shelf, and what does my daughter do? She pulls out the Star Trek book and brings it over, and she loves.
And you're crying. You're crying.
Oh,
tears.
She's got Star Trek clothes. She's got Star Trek like stuffies. You know, like, yeah, her teether is a Star Trek like rattle, because like it's, you know, the round teether part that she can suck on, but that the round part is the like bridge of the Enterprise, and it's shaped like the Enterprise so she can hold it. So I have done my part to like, you know, make her like a fan, but this was her on her own in a library full of books. And what's the book she brings? She brings me, and then of course I had to buy it for her. And then I find out that the same year they also released of like, you know, My First Color Star Trek book. And so I bought that one for her too. And so now she's like learning her colors, learning her ABCs, learning everything via Star Trek. And she loves it. We watch Star Trek Prodigy together, which is the Nickelodeon Star Trek show.
I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I am actively contributing to the fandom I am adding to it with my little mini me's there.
Now, the question is, because this is important to clarify, do you go on to forums or other parts of the internet to interact with others, you know, and to talk about Star Trek? Because for a lot of people, like, you can love, you know, something a lot, right? But you don't necessarily have someone to talk to about it. And that's why the internet is so fantastic, because you can find fandoms very easily. Now, do you do that? Or are you like a private enjoyer of your own fandoms? Because
that's kind of what I was saying.
I'm going to ask Jessie about that as well.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, is like a lot of the stuff that I'm a fan of, like Doctor Who and Supernatural and all that, I just indulge in like solo, right? Where I don't really chat with somebody about it. With Star Trek, I do like follow fan pages, and I will like comment on stuff and grab memes and stuff occasionally. Not as much as I used to, but obviously if I'm going to on the cruise and stuff as well, then I'm like actively being engaged in the fandom that way. The only other fandom that and this touches in the toxicity aspect of it, that I tried to be like somewhat involved in I really like the YouTube like movie reviewers and stuff, Red Letter Media.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so like they do, you know, all sorts of different stuff, and I find their stuff amusing. And so I was like, oh, you know, I wonder if there's like, you know, people that like talk about this online and stuff. And so like found some fan pages, and like it made me almost like question whether or not I should be a fan of like Red Letter Media. Cause I was like, these people are like racist bigots. And I'm like, how are these people fans of this? So I actively had to like go back and like rewatch the stuff that I was like watching. I was like, no, Red Letter Media is fine. There's no problem with this. I was like, it's just this fandom, like these various pages that I'd found that I was like, oh, this is like gross. Yeah. Like just a bunch of misogynistic, racist assholes. I was like, oh, but like it like I said, it made me pause initially, because I was like, wait, we're fans of the same thing? Like, am I missing something from the actual? And so I rewatched various reviews, and I was like, no, the Red Letter Media guys, they're fine. I got no problem with them. These guys are fine. It's just some of these fans are, ugh.
That's a good point.
But yeah,
I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's, especially when it's something like smaller. Like, obviously, I know there's like a toxic side to Star Trek, but it's such a big, embracing, culture that's to it, that it didn't make me question, I wonder if Star Trek really is bad, right? Like, I knew it wasn't, but with something like that, I had to actually pause and reflect and go, am I missing something on the original bit?
I don't know. I saw a lot of toxicity when those movies came out in like the early 10s.
Oh, like you mean the Star Trek films, like the 2009?
Yeah, with the Chris Pine ones.
Yeah,
where he was
guy.
Yeah. I remember so many people being just incredibly, the term butthurt over these movies because they were just like really schlock.
They were action films. There wasn't a lot of thought behind them.
Yeah. They were action films for Star Trek. I didn't have a problem with them because like they were still like the second one like kind of like recreated Wrath of Khan. Granted, whitewashed the villain. Fair. Not going to get into that. Different. But like just how vitriolic some people were towards these films that were like, they weren't necessarily remakes. They were just like, they were high quality fan. I guess they were fan remakes of it.
Yeah, they lacked the heart and soul of Star Trek. They were just action films. They're good like popcorn flicks, like just to watch and get. I don't.
Which is what they were. They're like, I would argue that's what they were designed to be.
Exactly. Yeah, and they looked pretty. That was nice, and it revived interest in Star Trek, where we got the series and stuff we have now.
Definitely.
And Thor was Kirk's dad, so that's kind of cool.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, Hemsworth, like the actor that plays Thor.
Hemsworth was.
Oh, yeah, he was Kirk's dad.
I did not know that. That's
Star Trek
cool.
2009. It was before
cool,
he was big.
Trivia. Ah.
Yeah,
I like that trivia.
That's
cool.
right. So Thor is Kirk's dad.
Makes sense. I don't know how, but it makes sense. It's
only thing that could have made it
head canon.
Only thing that could have made it better is if it was JVD.
Oh.
He's coming out of retirement. Put me in, coach. I'm doing another Star Trek.
Another Star Trek.
He hasn't done one. Don't tell him. Right. Don't tell him. Just let him say another Star Trek. It's fine.
I'm just saying, I would love to have like the Universal Soldier be like the security officer.
Oh no.
That's my headcanon now.
Give him a little cameo there. Okay. So, all right. Now, before we move on to Jessie, are there any fandoms that you interact with nowadays? Because I know that she interacts with a lot of Critical Role, right? Are there any fandoms that you interact with in that vein? I
would say the only thing, like, because I mean, like, I have 3 jobs and then the little one. So
fair.
Truth be, and before the
it's
2 other jobs,
for that.
Yeah, and before the 2 other jobs, I had the main job and then was working on the doctorate, so I was still tied up in that. So truth be told, the only like fandom or media thing that I interacted with on any sort of like regular basis, I'm now a co-host of.
You took fandom to a whole new level.
Yeah.
So that one, I love it so much. I'm going to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, in all honesty, that was like the only thing that I was like actively like engaged in because I didn't have a lot of time. So I would like make a couple comments on the YouTube videos, respond maybe to something else somebody else wrote, send messages here and there, and then now we're sitting here on the call here. So I don't think I can consider myself part of this fandom anymore.
I mean, you can still consider yourself part of the fandom if
you're
you're still a fan.
To it.
Yeah,
you're adding to it.
You are the ultimate fan.
But doesn't that sound? But at that stage, doesn't that sound somewhat egotistical? Because if you're like also on the show and you're like, I'm a huge fan of this show.
I mean,
like, it is phenomenal. That guy's voice. Oh my God. I love it.
If you look at the people that have been on this show, myself included, especially pointing at myself, you got to be a little bit of an egotist in order to like make 190 episodes of this shit. So
yeah, it's like if you're just listening to it and you're interacting with the host and making the comments, I feel like you're part of the fandom. Once you become one of the co-hosts, if you're like, you're going to love the show. This is my favorite show. I absolutely love it. I feel like you've maybe crossed a line.
You're self-serving at that point. You can still be a fan of it. I mean, honestly, to not go too far afield, because I do want to hear Jessie and everything about Critical Role, because I feel like that is really good conversation to be had. You can still be, a main contributor, main influencer. I hate that. Content creator. That's the term that I am okay with. You can be a main content creator for a fandom, but still consider yourself a fan.
But okay, so imagine like those one-act plays that people do, right? And where it's just like a single character,
like soliloquies and stuff like that. Okay.
So imagine an actor in one of those like one act, one character shows where it's just him sitting there and talking to this thing, right? And then he's at a restaurant somewhere or at a bar, and he's randomly having a conversation with somebody, like maybe a first date, and he's talking to the person, and they're like, "What's your favorite play?" And he says, "Oh, I absolutely love this one act show. It's so good. Like the actor in it, he's really involved, and he never misses a line. It's phenomenal. You really got to see it." And she says, "Oh, wow, you really speak highly of this." Yeah, it's my favorite. In all honesty, I've seen a lot of plays, a lot of performances. This is without a doubt my favorite. And then she goes to it the next night, and the guy is fucking the guy on the stage. It's like how would you take that? Like,
I mean, that's
would you be like, "Oh, he's just part of the fandom," or would you be like,
okay, you can still be a fan and still be part of it, but that's when you have to be honest. Like, I have loved it. I've followed it since, whenever, or I've listened to all of their episodes, that sort of thing. But then also that's when you should reveal that, yes, I am part of the, the cast now, because I was such a zealous fan. I loved it so much that I reached out enough times that we were like, let's put you on.
All right, baby, you won me back over. I'm Disinformed podcast #1 fan, baby. Woo!
I mean, honestly, yeah.
That's right. And if you disagree, if you think you're the #1 fan, leave a comment below and let me know.
There we go. See?
Comment on every episode.
Hell yeah. You are, and you know what? Comment on the shorts too, because we got like over 1,000 of those, because I have my moments, but still, no, like it's a good point to make. Like, can people that produce, can like the people that like create that content still be fans of that content? Like, can you create something that you can look back and say, I am proud of this and I want other people to know? Because there have been plenty of times where I'll be talking to people about random shit and I'll be like, oh, we did an episode of this, or we did 2 episodes, or we did something similar to this. And like, that's still something like I am passionate enough about this to where I hate the term fangirl. I will obsess over the podcast when it involves like, oh, you really like, I don't know, the Satanic Panic. We did an episode of that, or you're talking about.
You guys have touched on it a few times.
Yeah, or exactly. Like my favorite. I think my favorite Disinformed podcast. Oh, there's just so many, but I think my favorite moment was a conversation related to the Dildorado.
Okay, in that case, you're just being purposely vain. Okay, so I mean, yes, the Dildorado,
like the veins on the Dildorado, baby.
Good reference, good conversation to Dildorado is canon, yes, but like, it's still something just kidding. You're bringing up.
It's possible.
My favorite Disinformed podcast is actually the 4-part KFC, like Colonel Sandler's one.
Yeah, no one can talk shit about KFC. Like, Colonel Sanders, mwah. And I'm not saying that because, Shane will listen to this later and have a giggle, but like, that's good content. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But
chef's kiss.
But no, to your point, Michael, like, you can be a fan of something and also create content for it, and we can talk about Critical Role because
yes,
Danny,
perfect Sojourny segue. Perfect. Thank you.
Their lore keeper, who is an official employee, and she sorts through all of Matt's lore and tries to keep it documented because there's years worth of content, and like sometimes people forget things.
I'm glad she's getting paid for that, because that
I'm just
sounds
picturing like a big board on the thing with like the It's Always Sunny
strings,
bit there with like the strings. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, honestly, if you've played any sort of D&D campaign for more than like 5-6 sessions, you need that. You really need someone that's like, all right, I have everything charted out. I have the map. I know where you guys have gone. Like, honestly, I feel like you need that. So
like if they have a question on anything they've done, like in their version of like an After Dark show, she'll come in and like tell them like this is what happened and that kind of thing. But she gets paid to do that, and she also does written recaps of the episode. So if you missed one, you can go back and read it really quick if you want to watch the current live one.
That's so nice.
But she was a fan. If you go back and you rewatch the first campaign, you see her pop up in chat all the time, and she was just a fan, and she popped up so much and got to know the cast that they're like, come do this for us. And so now she works for them and she does create content for them, but she is still a Critical Role fangirl for sure.
She's a fan first. She gets paid, and she does it in an official capacity. But at the end of the day, she is primarily, first and foremost, a fan. She could still be part of it. She could still be main cast. But when you ask her, and this might be me supposing things, I might be mansplaining things here. I say both. Manspreading, because that's what led to mansplaining.
You know, nobody man spreads better than my man JVD.
You know what? You are not wrong. He is an example that all man spreaders can, look up to. But like at the end of the day, like she is so knowledgeable. Like, would she say she is a fan or she is an employee of it? Like that, like to me, like I feel like that is super important to like ask yourself, is like when like you're getting paid, yes, that is fantastic, but like at the end of the day you're like, yes, I'm a fan, I love this shit, this is so fantastic.
I would love to get paid to do anything for Critical Role. And
getting paid,
I would still be a fan.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, just because you're getting paid doesn't mean you can be like, well, I can't say I'm a fan anymore.
So right? How heavily are you involved in like the fan community, Jess?
Not super involved in it, but I do get involved here and there with like Twitter. I'll comment on stuff. I'll make tweets about the show. Like I'll live tweet it sometimes, and just like my reaction to what's going on. Obviously, I have made a lot of fan art for it, since digital art is my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I have made TikToks about it too, but I don't.
That's still content.
It is. It's me engaging with the community.
Exactly.
The most recent one I did blew up, and it's got like over 12,000 views and a bunch of comments and likes. And I was like, "What is happening?" Like I thought this was the stupidest thing I've ever done, but it keeps getting likes. It's being circulated still, so that's kind of cool.
I mean, like that happened to us. What was it? We did. I did a short where it was just. I think it was ex-host, previous host that might make a comeback eventually, hopefully soon. Courtney. She just made a bunch of like I think meowing or like noises or something like that, and that became one of the more popular shorts that I put on YouTube, where she was just like making meowing noises or something to that effect.
I mean,
and where I was like, how did that happen?
Cute girl making meowing sounds. I don't know. I'm sure there's a fan base out there.
Apparently there is.
There's probably several OnlyFans accounts related to something similar too.
Oh no!
Oh my goodness!
Sorry, Courtney.
No, not Courtney. I'm talking about like just making meowing sounds. Oh my goodness. Or ASMR things too.
Oh, yeah.
My engagement is limited, and it is because of the toxic behavior of the Critical Role community, also known as critters.
Oh, is that what they're called?
They are called critters.
I like that. No, I like that. Yeah.
You know, because you crit on a 20, but also they like the little critters on the show. The first season they had an animal companion named Trinket. He was a bear. I love him very much.
Aww.
But yeah, there's a lot of toxic behavior displayed in that fandom, and it's something that I am a really big fan of the show. It means a lot to me. Critical Role saved my life pretty much. It came into me at a time where I didn't want to be around anymore, and it gave me something to look forward to. So it is very important to me. I'm never gonna like denounce it or claim I'm not a fan of it, but like some people's behavior, man, it's bad. Marisha Ray, one of the cast members on it, got a lot of shit. Still gets a lot of shit for how she plays the game. A lot of people that claim to be fans of the show accuse her of metagaming, of being like a bad D&D player. And they would, when they showed chat on the streams for a while, like you could see people just harassing her and some of the other women on the show, but she got it a lot more than anybody else. So that was a weird thing that happened. Also, Critical Role fans don't take kindly to anyone displaying any kind of criticism for the show. Like they get very defensive and aggressive about it in ways that they don't really need to, because like Critical Role has gotten a lot of criticism, as any piece of media is going to have. It's consumed by a bunch of different people with diverse backgrounds, and everybody has their own opinion of it, and so criticism is going to happen. But like the fans jump in defense of it when I don't really think it's necessary or appropriate to do so.
Now, are those same fans like internally critical as well of the people that are, you know, bringing some of that toxicity? Like, are they critical of those people too? Like, hey, don't bring that negativity here.
Or are they like gatekeeping, where it's like, it sounds like you aren't part of the fandom. The only criticism can be coming within the fandom because we know better, and it sounds like you don't know better.
I think it's kind of that. Something that has gotten a lot of attention is people of color and content creators of color coming forward and saying that Critical Role isn't very diverse in that, or that they've made some missteps regarding that. I know Marisha Ray did get a lot of criticism about her character from campaign 2 being like represented as a person of color. I didn't see that from her art, like for the character. I thought it was just like a tan person, not necessarily like a person of color from any kind of nationality or background, what have you. And that's just how it was perceived by me. But I'm not white, but I am white passing, so that's really not like my argument. I don't feel like I can talk about that
understandable
or any criticism of that, but people have pointed it out. They also did point out that Sam Riegel, another one of the cast members, used a lot of Romani stereotypes for one of his characters, and there was some criticism of that. But people are just like, if anything like that comes out, they just jump to the defense of the cast and crew and their characters and be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. They're not doing that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you need to sit down. Like this is not your conversation.
You don't need to be rabid about it.
Yeah, like this does not involve you. And most of the time that criticism does come from people who are not people of color, and they are white, and they're attacking these creators that are people of color for pointing out a criticism that is in fact valid.
Understandable. Yeah.
So like, I'm just like, I don't. You're not like my people. Like, yes, I am a fan of the show, but people like that, like, you're not my people here.
And it's like you don't even want to like engage in the conversation either because it just like makes you feel like icky. Because
you're like, damned if I do, damned if I don't. Like, I want to help. Like, I want to help back, the people that are making valid criticisms, because like that's something that we should do as consumers of, these media. Always be not necessarily criticizing everything they do, but if there's something that we feel like needs to be criticized, like, yes, like.
Well, more like areas of opportunity, like or opportunities for improvement, right?
Yeah. When I mean criticize, I don't mean like everything's areas, shit. But,
because we can all grow, and so it's like
exactly
if there's a way to, bring in more diverse voices and whatnot, that's always like a positive aspect.
Yeah,
I think that part of the thing with that stuff too is it's difficult to engage with because like I know some of the criticisms that I've heard of lately, it was like. What like Matt has like Xandus, right? With like and like some of the pronoun issues related, where I've heard people say like that Matt keeps having to like beat people over the head regarding like Xandus's pronouns, and then I've heard people say like he should have just made Xandus like a regular character then, and
like
it's like what does that even mean?
Criticize Matt specifically for because like Sam's character uses they them pronouns, and so does Talus and Jaffe's character in the same campaign in which Xandus exists. So it's weird that they're choosing that specifically.
Yeah, but it's just like, but it's like I don't, when I see stuff like this, like I don't even want to engage because then it's like there's obvious like critiques to even the commentary of like, well, what do you mean by like he should have just made a normal character?
Yeah,
like, what does that mean? Yeah, but then it's like, well. I also, I mean, especially more speaking towards the Star Trek side of things, but like with things like that, I also just want to enjoy the content, right? Like, I don't want to like engage in these like turf war battles or like, so it's like part of me is like, I want to push back on like some of the stuff that I take issue with. But then the other part of me is like, I don't want to invest the mental energy with that. Like, I'm just here to have fun.
Yeah. And that's how I feel about it too, especially with Critical Role. Like the cast and crew have good hearts. They never have done anything to intentionally hurt or, discriminate against a group.
Yeah.
And Matt's NPCs specifically are very diverse in, their gender, sexual orientation, nationality. Like he covers a spectrum of NPCs, and
which is awesome. Fantastic.
But like, if anyone has criticism for it, like cool, but I don't want to engage in that. I'm here to enjoy Critical Role for what it is. Like if you have a valid criticism for them, like sure, make it heard, but I'm not going to engage in it because that's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to enjoy the show. I'm going to eat my popcorn and love it for what it is, which is awesome D&D role playing, and the stories they make and the characters they make are awesome, and they're engaging, and they have heart, and they tug on your emotions, and that's what I'm here for.
Which is fantastic. Like that's what people want at the end of the day, which I hate that term, but when
what
you
term?
want
the end of the day?
The end of the day, there's a thing like whenever people say at the end of the day, as in like they want to just quash any sort of like argument against what they're saying, as in like, this is my summation, no one should say anything against it because this is just how I feel. This is a summation.
At the end of the day, what you're saying doesn't really matter because of whatever. I gotcha.
Yes, yeah. Like they are making their own content and you can choose to engage with it however you will, right? If you don't like what they're doing, there is always, and not a lot of people, I would say, like think that this is an option, but you can choose to just not engage with it. If there is some aspect of,
well, I'm going to push back a little bit there, Michael. I'm going to interject.
Okay.
I'm going to
interject.
All right,
go for it. Go for it. Do it. Push me, Daddy.
Well, because you're kind of contradicting yourself just from what we were just speaking of a few minutes ago as well, in terms of like, it's always good to like, push the things you love to like grow, to become better and stuff, right? And if you're saying like at the end of the day, if you don't like it, you don't have to engage with it. It's like, that is somewhat akin to the, if you don't like living in, or if you don't like the government, leave the country, right? And it's like, well, no, hold on. If I take issue, if I take issue with this, I still can. That doesn't mean that I'm against it. Maybe I want to engage with it still to make it better, to resolve those issues, right? Because you could also turn to those, people of color that Jess was referencing earlier and be like, well, if you don't like the way it exists now, don't engage. But that doesn't help anybody grow, right? So that's I would caution against that sort of argument.
No, that's fair. Let me clarify, because that's a fair point. Because, yes, if you don't feel strongly about it, then telling someone that they should just pull away and not try and give their own thought to it would, deaden a lot of conversation that should be had, which is fair. I guess I'm more talking about conversation within the fandom, not necessarily the work itself. As a person that enjoys that media, that consumes that media, everyone should have their own ability to, give their critiques. Whether or not they're valid, I don't want to talk about that, because that's a whole box of worms, Pandora's box, right? But the ability, the desire to want to interact with the fandom, because that is something that I have never wanted to do since my interaction with the Homestuck community. I never wanted to interact with the people consuming the content. People making the content, that's fine. There's obviously always criticisms that you with your own viewpoint can give. And most of the time, and I say most of the time because there are situations where people are being unnecessary, won't get into detail, but where your criticisms are always valid, representation, always a valid point to make, but whether or not you want to engage with your point with the community, not necessarily with the content creators, that's, I think, the fine line that I'm trying to draw here is, whether or not you want to, or even feel the desire to make your point with the community, not necessarily the content creators. Because I feel like the content creators should, as with us, should always be open to criticism. Whether or not, regardless of the criticism, being able to take it and be like, oh yeah, you make a good point, or you don't make a good point, and here's why. But when you have to try and justify your own position to people that don't care, or people that have their own ideals set in mind for how this media should be enjoyed, that is the point that I'm trying to make. Where I'm trying to find the exact words to try and explain myself, but I hate engaging with fandom when I know that what I say won't matter.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking earlier too, when I said I didn't want to invest the mental energy in it, because most of the time you're just you're wasting your energy just because you're not going to change somebody's mind. Because a lot of these people, you would like to think that if you took the time to make a reasonable argument, maybe touch on some of the critiques that they're making and reference things that, we could all have a polite, civilized conversation in which, hearts and minds can be changed, right? One way or the other. Maybe during this conversation, I go in thinking one way and then I leave thinking, oh, you know what? Actually, I hadn't looked at it from that perspective. I think you're right. This does need to get changed, or whatever, right? But most of the time it doesn't go in that way. And most of the time you engage in it, and then, it just gets shut down into name calling or some petty BS.
Or some way of being well, your point is invalid because... Yeah,
and then you get a bunch of other people that chime in with that, might also support the BS stuff, and then they want to chime in, and it ends up devolving. It's very unfortunate, and it's kind of a sign of the country in which we live in, with the...
Whoa. We're getting a little too political here, hashtag.
Well, that's what I was... Yeah, that's what I was going to reference, is we live in this two-party system in which everything is sports teams. It's either, it's us against them, right? And so you lose that lovely world of gray in which reality actually exists, and it has to be black or white. And it's like, I can't agree with you, even if you're making maybe 1 or 2 points that I might agree with, just because
your point is
because I can't exactly, I can't be on that side. And we all paint each other with the same brushes there, and in terms of like making generalizations, like I know myself, if I see somebody walking down the street with a particular hat that says something about maybe making America great again, I'm already like coming with some preconceived notions about this person before they've even opened their mouth to say a single word to me. I've already judged them as a person, potentially.
You're not wrong with Gilbert, but
yeah. So I'm just saying, we all do.
Sorry, what were you gonna say, Jesse?
I was gonna say I do that, but with other things. Like if someone's wearing a DC shirt, I judge them immediately. I'm like, yeah, you're not the kind of person I want to talk to right now.
Did you say like DC, like versus Marvel? Is that what you mean?
There's not much in the DC universe that I like, to be honest. I'm just.
Are you talking the cinematic universe?
Yes.
Okay, fair. I thought you were talking about all of DC. And
No.
Okay.
Like I very much enjoyed Teen Titans. Okay,
that's
probably like my favorite thing. And there's other comics that I enjoy.
I thought like Michael did. I was like, wait, okay,
universe.
No, that makes more sense. I was thinking along the same lines as Michael. I was like, whoa, that's like some major shading.
Whoa,
it's like everything, Batman and everything. I was like, whoa.
No,
I mean, Teen Titans.
Okay, no, fair. Exactly.
Batman and Robin. It comes back to Batman and Robin. Always does.
No.
Okay, no, that makes a lot more sense.
The new movies.
Gotcha.
Which DCU versus like
fair.
MCU.
I am looking forward to the Flash, though. I am looking forward to the Flash. And we got. Oh, come on, we got Batman. We got Tim Burton's Batman back.
We got Keaton.
Back. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
We got the Vulture.
It's that other dude. What's his name?
Affleck?
I don't know. No,
Affleck.
the guy that plays Barry.
Oh, Ezra. No, yeah, Ezra something rather.
Yeah.
Right?
I thought you were talking like Barry, like the HBO show, and I was like,
no.
never
It's the same
mind.
reason why I do not like or have never watched Doctor Strange.
You don't like Cumberbatch?
Benevolent Cucumber Patch? I don't know. I don't like his face. There's something about his face that it just gives me the ick. And so...
Well, he's no Jean-Claude Van Damme, that's for sure.
I've never seen him do the splits, whereas Jean-Claude Van Damme definitely can. I've never... You know what? If Benedict Cumberbatch can do the splits like Jean-Claude Van Damme can... I might have a little bit more respect. That's fair. But like, I understand. If you don't like the actor for any sort of reason, because they're all valid, within reason. But like, if you don't like his face, you're not gonna like him. Like, that's something that's like, I can't convince you otherwise. I can't be like, oh, come on, look at his face. Just look at that face and imagine you're giving a kiss on the cheek. He's a lot better, right? Exactly. There's nothing I could do to convince you that like his face is, not something that you want to smash in with a hammer or something like that.
I don't feel that strongly about it. It just
tell me how you really feel, Michael. Jeez.
That's the best way I can describe it. It's just
maybe I'm just thinking of him from Wrath of Khan, but. Because he was in there.
Yeah.
I can't even remember if he did that, like, what was that Scream? Was that, like, recreated, like,
I don't
really
think
well?
So.
Okay.
No.
Because you can't, like, it's like the one thing that happens in cinema. My voice cracks for emphasis. That happens in cinema.
Yeah, that and, like, I love those little like cinema tropes with the same thing with the yelling at the sky, like why, and then it like pans out and out and out further. Why?
Or like no from like episode 3 of Star Wars, because those are the references that I'll know.
A fandom that's toxic as
Oh, yeah. I don't. Yeah. No, yeah. There's a reason why they were like, you know what? We don't need an episode 10. We'll do some backstories. We'll do it all through Disney Plus. We'll do that. Oh, you want a Solo? You want like a prequel to like for Solo, for Han Solo? No. We'll do it, and then we're gonna back away from that. Like,
I enjoy Star Wars for what it is, but like some of the fans and like seeing people talk about it and interact with like the media, the content, and then the actors too. I'm just like,
it's so interesting.
They're never
though.
satisfied. Never satisfied.
It's just so interesting how some things just don't change. Like if you stepped back in time, 40 years ago, like you would have had Star Trek: The Motion Picture come out like 4 years earlier. You'd have had Star Wars, the second film, come out 3 years earlier, something like that. So, because I think the second one was 1980, wasn't it, or was that the third one?
It was
either
before
way.
I was alive.
Yeah, but my point being is that
I know the one with the whales, and that's
could,
the only one I know.
Well, no, I'm talking about Star Wars. Like, which one?
I thought
19. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you said Star Trek, and I'm
saying
like,
Star
I know
Trek,
the one with the whales, huh?
Well, because I know Star Trek: The Motion Picture came out in 79. I think the first Star Wars came out in 77, and I think the second one came out in 80. But my point being that if you step back to 1983, within the last few years, you would have had Star Trek and Star Wars out, and they'd both be like in popular culture, being spoken about. And so it's so interesting that like, even though things have changed so much, we've had like the dawn of the internet age, right? What are people like what are we talking about here? And what do a lot of people still talk about? Like the new Star Wars shows, the new Star Trek shows and stuff, right? So it's so interesting that like these fandoms have been able to thrive and continue. And I mean, like, not just them. I mean, there's a new Indiana Jones fucking movie coming out soon.
Oh God, you're right. I forgot about that. Oh man, they're like digitally
that one.
Yeah, they like digitally like de-aged his face for flashbacks, and I'm like,
yeah,
just let the poor man he's like 102,000 years old. Just let him die. Just let him retire and enjoy his life.
Well, I am sure he's wanting to do it.
Yeah, he's also said that someone else will play Indiana Jones over his dead body. So.
Yeah, that is true. Sorry, I thought I projected his love of playing Han Solo over his love of playing, Indiana Jones, because it is pretty known that he despised playing Star Wars and playing Han Solo. He is not a fan of that, and so I just assumed incorrectly that he hated playing Indiana Jones the same caliber. But they also won't let him die because he's now, what was it, Thunderbolt Ross or something like that in the MCU. He was cast for Captain America 4. As Thunderbolt Ross because the original actor John Hurt unfortunately had passed away, and so he was casted as his replacement. So, which I had totally forgotten John Hurt even was in the MCU, to be perfectly honest. So
had I, the War Doctor.
Yes.
You know who they need to bring in to the MCU?
If you say David Tennant, I'm going to disagree because he already is in it.
They need a man that can come in with just a lot of passion, who can make a double impact, if you will. Somebody that has a lion heart. Somebody that could really like just make the MCU and the movies like a blood sport again. They need to bring in my man, the Universal Soldier, Jean-Claude motherfucking Van Damme.
How old is he? Would he even come out?
62 years young, baby. 62 years young.
He's only 62?
That's right. My man. She knew what I was going with when I was talking about Lionheart and everything, kickboxer. Yeah.
He's like a
double impact.
Yeah.
He's like a good 15 years younger than like Harrison Ford. Isn't Harrison Ford like close to 80 or some shit like that?
I have no idea why I've made this episode all about JVD, but...
Because that was your sexual awakening.
And it is canon. You did say that, I think, after we rolled, so it is known. It is canon.
Listen, that man is not expendable to me.
Was he in the Expendables?
Yes, he was.
He came back for that? Honestly, I figured he just retired and he's like, you know what? I got enough money. I don't give a fuck.
He had to come back because JVD had nowhere to run. Shane would be here getting these references. That one's for you, Shane.
My homie. I pour one out for him, even if he ain't here.
That's right, because Shane, you are a Street Fighter.
Sure you can. Oh, my goodness.
That's right.
So, I feel like, does anyone have any closing points that they want to make?
Oh,
because
you're closing it out here? What are you trying to be? A time cop? Sorry. That's another JVD reference.
Sorry, I thought when he said time cop, I thought you meant RoboCop. I was like, he wasn't RoboCop. Get the fuck out of here.
No,
I was like,
he's in a movie called Time Cop.
He was Time Cop, yes.
I'm sorry. I'll try to stop. I've had trouble because I have a no retreat, surrender policy.
I walked into it. I deserve that.
Fandoms are fun as long as you stay away from the crazies.
Okay. I feel like that is it used to be back in the day that you could, engage with these fandoms and be proud of it. But I definitely feel, and you guys can, agree, disagree. But I feel like nowadays, there's so much toxicity with being in a fandom that it kind of gets embarrassing. I liked Rick and Morty. Would I count myself as part of the fandom? Well, I liked Rick and Morty several seasons ago. I haven't watched it since season 4. So call me out of date. That's fine. Did I ever associate with the fandom? Hell no, I did not. Because ever since they tried to do the Szechuan sauce and I saw videos of people dancing on McDonald's counters demanding Szechuan sauce, I never even mentioned that I did not associate with that fandom. And I feel like that is kind of a thing that occurs a lot nowadays, and I could be wrong because I don't associate with them. But I feel like enjoying something but not necessarily being a fandom is what is more in vogue nowadays. And I could be wrong and prove me wrong because I would like to. But that's the kind of point that I wanted to make, and that is my closing thoughts.
And mine would just be avoid the crazies, like Jess said. And going back to Star Trek, we should all embrace IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Just because you're maybe not necessarily on board with the way things are exactly being done doesn't mean that we can't embrace the diversity, embrace the complexity that it brings, and always push to make things grow and be better than they are, because we all can be better than we are today. And I think that's what we should all strive to do, both in our personal lives, in our fandoms, and with our children.
And don't be a dick to actors.
Especially not Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Especially everyone, including Jean-Claude Van Damme. And this is where I, say, follow us on social media. We don't use them. We also have a YouTube, Disinformed Podcast. Find us wherever you desire to find us. We probably don't really maintain whatever social media you use. But
Great sales pitch, Michael. Great. Follow us on social media. We don't use them. Find us on YouTube. We don't use it.
That's what Shane does. That's what
Shane
Shane does.
Them on the TikToks. There's stuff there. It may be old, but there is stuff there.
If you find us on YouTube.
Instagram.
She makes a point. There is stuff there. There's not new stuff, but there is stuff. Also, Jessie, if you would like to do pluggables, because I don't feel like we ever did that whenever you were on, and I feel like we should, because, what you do is so fantastic. We want you to talk about it.
Yeah. I'm a digital artist. You can find me at Bad Gamer Jessie, or no, Bad Artist Jessie. I'm getting my handles mixed up. If you want to play video games with me, you can find me at Bad Gamer Jessie. But if you want to look for my art or my TikToks, you can find me at Bad Artist Jessie on most socials: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that fun stuff. And yeah,
Nice.
if you like my art, give it a little heart, because, it's hard with algorithms to get your stuff out there, and yeah.
Especially with the AI trying to steal everybody's art.
Yeah.
Which would be an interesting episode to hear about, like, that evolution and, whether things are trending in one way or another. I feel like that would be a really cool thing to talk about.
Yeah, someday I will accrue everything into an episode for this, but I have to not be mad about it.
Also true.
It might be another 3-parter. It might not be. Like, there's a lot going on with it. I did mention it last time I was here. There's finally a lawsuit going through for some of the AI programs.
Ooh.
So we'll see what comes of that, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed.
I'm crossing my fingers for the artists that actually exist, as opposed to the AI. So there's that. Yeah. I don't remember the outro because I'm blanking and I don't like being put on the spot. But, find us wherever you find us. You found us. Continue to find us. It's perfect. And until next time, I'm Michael.
And I'm Michael.
And I'm Jessie.
And zippity zoop, we're out of here.